I do not believe we have met.
Oh, okay.
Not yet.
Well, I'm Alvin. I'm
Nice,
Alvin.
nice to meet you. I'm Terrell. I'm a graduate student at University of North Dakota.
Okay. That's a far colder place than where I'm at.
Yes, it is.
What year are you in North Dakota?
I'm a first year student here, and I serve as the campus representative program co-chair for Division 45.
That's where I've seen your name, and has passed that on, and so she did the notice around the campus reps.
Yes.
Like, that's where I've seen your name. So I was like, have we met before?
Definitely.
So is North Dakota home or home for now, or?
It's home for the next few years. I'm originally from Texas.
Oh my goodness.
Me too. I'm Grace.
Yes, it's a pretty significant difference. Grass change, but it's okay.
What part of Texas are you from?
Austin.
Oh, okay.
Austin.
So the best part of Texas.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah, I did my graduate work at UT Austin. So that was, yeah, definitely my favorite town. Yeah, but I'm from Houston.
Okay, nice. I actually did my undergraduate work at University of Houston. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh my. So how are you finding North Dakota?
It's interesting. It's just a lot different. It's a lot colder than what I'm used to. So, but overall, it's really a nice community. I think that it is enjoyable here. I just have to find my pockets, and it works.
Okay. Yeah. Part of grad school is survival, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's the kind of stuff the president.
Hey there.
Hi, Helen.
Hi there.
So folks, why don't we sit tight? It's only 4:02. So, we got Terrell here, we got Grace, we got Helen. Let's see who else joins us, and then we'll kind of hop into it and see where it takes us. So feel free to.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay. Feel free to get something to drink or something to nosh on.
Yeah, I'm going to get something to eat because it's like 6 o'clock here. So I'm eating. That's why I have my thing off.
All right.
Well, hi, Terrell. We've been in email correspondence, and I don't think we've met each other. So it's kind of nice to meet each other via Zoom.
Yes, indeed. I know we've been in communication, so it's nice to meet you as well.
Who are you working with up in North Dakota?
I'm working at the moment with Dr. Tom McQueen-Bailey.
Oh, yeah. Tom McQueen's great.
Yes, he is pretty awesome.
He's a wonderful person. He was one of our fellows in the Leadership Development Institute a few years back, and we had him down here at USF for a while, University of San Francisco, and then I was really bummed to hear he was headed out. So I hear he's doing well though.
Yeah, it's going pretty great.
That's good. He deserves great. So Desa snagged you to get into this campus rep thing. Is that it?
She did. She did that. And also, I'm just eager to just be involved and to be of service where I can.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we can talk a little bit about what we're doing in 45 today and see if any of it piques your interest. But and also to hear, what's on your mind as well.
Sounds good.
Okay. So we're at 4:05. But, I want to be respectful of your time, but also respectful of other folks. Should we just get started and maybe just begin a conversation and then rope people in as they come on board? Would that sound okay to folks? I know Grace has to log off halfway through, but Terrell?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so it's a small town hall. Of 5 folks.
Okay.
But let's take advantage of that, and that way we can actually engage and have an exchange. So let me just kind of put a frame for all this. One of the things that really hit me and our communications team was really the need to stay connected with our membership, right? And even before my term began in January, wanted to really think about ways that, even between conventions and between formal events, are there ways that we could stay connected with folks? So this is something we're trying new. So I appreciate, the 3 of you just joining us here and creating space in your day to come and try something new. And the hope is just to have more informal conversations so people have an understanding of what's going on in 45. We get to hear better from folks from a whole range of different stages of their career, what they would need from 45, but really just to have a sustained and ongoing conversation rather than just waiting for the newsletter or waiting for a convention or a formal meeting. So that's kind of the spirit of where this came from. So the 3 of you, yes, the big 3 of you, get to be the inaugural bunch for this. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for making the time. What I wanted to do, particularly as this is the very first one we wanted to do, we thought it would be helpful, since this is the beginning of the year in my presidential term, would be just to give folks kind of an overview of, what we're trying to do for the upcoming year. What are some of the major things that we're focused on? Use that as the stimulus for discussion, right? And you can kind of soak that in, and then really have me stop talking and really check in with folks and say, hey, how does this sound to you? What do you think? You got questions? That kind of thing. So how does that sound to folks? Does it sound okay?
That sounds great.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So what I did was, I'm going to switch here. I have a very, very brief PowerPoint that I'd like to share with folks. And also, I wanted to get a heads up. I am recording this also, just before we dive into it. And the reason is there's a lot of people said, I'd love to come. I can't make it. Can I get notes and whatnot? And we'll write up some notes and send those out. But recording this and giving it access to all the members is also going to be helpful. Okay. All right. So I'm going to, so it's already recording. Let me switch over to a screen share, and we'll get started from there. Let's see. Okay, so just to check my visual, what you should see on your screen is a opening slide for this town hall. Terrell, can you see that?
I can see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, all right. So that's just the title slide. So why don't we go into the next one? So how we got here, like most good things, really relies on what's happened in the past. And, I wanted to take a moment, because a lot of the ideas that we have this year really came to fruition and began to germinate under Helen's leadership and her radical healing focus, right? And I want to take you back to the executive committee meeting from last year in 2018. And that was a time when Helen and myself and the executive committee at that time really decided to pull back and think, all right, you know, apart from what Division 45 already does, apart from the good things it already does well, what would we want Division 45 to do? You know, what are the things that we would hope it does? What are the dreams we would have, you know, as the EC leadership? What would we, what direction would we like to take this in, right? And it was a very different kind of a meeting. It was very much a retreat style meeting where we all really, the exercise we called it was hopes and dreams. What are your hopes and dreams for 45? And a number of things really emerged, right? But the one thing that, the two main things that really emerged quite clearly and quite strongly is particularly in this climate, particularly in terms of the racism, the homophobia, the xenophobia, all the kinds of discrimination, the violence, the fear that's being really stoked and supported by systems and systems of power. You know, one of the things that really emerged was this real sense of being present and relevant and engaged in the communities. Like, what is Division 45 doing out there to affect things in families, in neighborhoods, you know, in the schoolyards, in schools, at temples, you know, what are we doing directly there? Not to say that our members haven't been doing that, but, you know, because clearly we do. Many of our members, that's the strength of who they are in terms of their scholarship, in terms of their service, in terms of their pedagogy, they do that. But there was a real sense from the executive committee that what are we doing as an organization? How are we using the power of an organization to have an impact in the community, right? And so that was one of the themes. The other theme was really around the next generation, right? Particularly graduate students as well as our early career colleagues. And what is it that we could be doing as a division to really, really support that? And so again, we had a brainstorming session around that. And there was a whole host of different ideas that came out of that. And so the spirit of that meeting was really a time of creativity, a time of pushing ourselves to think beyond what we typically normally do and really try to re-envision that. And I really want to give complete credit to Helen because I think she created a space that people invested themselves, were intrigued about the possibilities, and, you know, we just really engaged with that idea. So I know Helen's on the call right now, but I just want to make sure that she gets the respect and honor that, you know, she definitely deserves from her leadership. So that's kind of where it began. And so the energy from that really translates then into two key groups that I want to share with. And so we created two task forces, right? And I'm going to talk about the first one right now. One is on the task force on community engagement. And yeah, I asked a very small group of people to run that. They're co-led by Rebecca Toporek, who is a former member of Division 45's EC, and then Chris Liang, who's been very active also in Division 52, as well as in AAPA. So I asked them to really think about what does community engagement really look like? And I will kind of flesh that out a little bit more, okay? So Rebecca and Chris have been very gracious about leading that. Now let me turn to the next group. We also formed, again, to kind of respond to this issue of how do we support our newer colleagues. We formed a Next Gen Task Force. Some of you may be familiar with Desa Daniel, who's a graduate student at the University of New Mexico, but graduate student probably doesn't quite do her justice, given all that she does in leadership across different organizations. So she really stepped in to lead from a graduate student perspective. And then Barbara Thelemore, who's a newer professor at the College of Worcester. And she was a prior member and prior secretary for Division 45. So we formed these two groups really to wrestle with early career stuff as well as community engagement. And the next slide, I'll tell you really the tasks that they were set out to do, okay? So what I asked from them on this next slide, you can see is I asked them to think about blueprints, right? I did not want them to think about, all right, what is one program we can do to help graduate students? What is one thing that we can do to be more engaged in the community? That was not, that was a level of depth that was insufficient. You know, what I asked them to do, and here's the goal that I set out for them. What I wanted them to do is I wanted them to take a look at the entire division, all aspects of the division, right? Such that if we were to make this a truly community engaged division, that a new member, say 5, 10 years from now, could come in, right, and see that reflected in multiple spaces. Not just because, oh, they do this one thing, therefore they're community engaged, right? So I'm not gonna go over all these points here in the blueprints. I just want you to kind of look at it and sort of soak it in and get a sense of all the range of things. Like, so I wanted to look at our bylaws. You know, are there ways that the bylaws need to be changed so that they reflect our community engagement? Look at our journal, right? So CDEMP is a fabulous journal. It's a very strong journal. You know, it's one of the preeminent journals in its field. It's growing. The last several editors have really helped it grow. But is there anything about the journal that needs to be changed so that future readers, when they look at it, say, wow, you know, CDEMP has a real strong focus on community engagement in terms of its content, in terms of its board membership, in terms of its methodology, right? Similarly, like if we looked at our website, are there things that needed to be changed on our website to really convey to people, we have a commitment to our graduate students, right? And there's multiple places on the website that demonstrate that, the ways we're using social media, demonstrate that commitment, etc. So I share this with you because the task that these two groups had was a huge one. It was to really dream bigger about the whole organization. And again, it wasn't just to look at one thing they could do to support graduate students, but how do you change the whole organization, right? So it's huge. At this point, both groups have developed a tentative blueprint and a range of different ideas. This last January, they presented to the EC to share their ideas with the executive committee, right? The next two town halls will actually focus much more in depth about those groups presenting their ideas. So for instance, the next town hall, which will be in April, third Wednesday of April, right? Chris Liang and Rebecca Toporek will be talking to folks about, hey, here's our ideas for community engagement, right? And what do people think? Does this make sense? The next town hall after that will be Barbara and Desa coming and saying, hey, graduate students, folks who are new in the field, new clinicians, new professors, here are some of the ideas we think that the executive committee should change within Division 45. What do you think? So we'll get a lot more depth in that space, but I wanted to give you just a hint that, you know, the things that these committees are dealing with are huge. It's structural changes, it's long-term changes, it's strategic changes. And just to give you even a preview, both committees, for instance, have talked about changing the leadership structure of Division 45 so that there is representation from an early career person, from people from the community or people with expertise in community engagement, so that it's not just a program that's out there, but it's creating leadership opportunities with people who can represent those constituencies and be at the table, right? Because this isn't just my initiative. If it's only me doing community engagement, then, you know, is that really gonna last? Maybe, maybe not. Will the next person take it on? Maybe, maybe not. Will it be here in 10 years? Maybe, maybe not, right? So if we really are going to make a commitment to graduate students, to community engagement, to early career colleagues, then my belief is that you've got to actually change the structure, right, of the whole organization so that it does respond, it does reflect those community needs. So this list of items on the blueprints just, again, is designed to stretch your thinking about all the different ways that this commitment could be infused throughout the organization, okay? So, so again, next plug, April, third Wednesday in April, it's Chris Liang, Rebecca Topork. They're going to be doing a town hall on what it means for community engagement, okay? So let me give you another peek though. One of the ideas that emerged from the group as a step towards community engagement, right? But as a singular program right now, but it is an extension of the community engagement pieces. You know, we really began thinking about how, you know, we are the experts, theoretically, in the field, and what it means to work with, to serve, to teach, to study, to partner with communities of color, right? So the question for us, for a lot of us, was how do we use that expertise? How do we use those skill sets really to benefit the communities directly? And we began to take more of a service approach really in using that expertise. Again, we do that individually, but how do we leverage and harness the expertise of organizations to serve? So what is this Youth of Color Forum? Real simple. It's basically a conference that is designed to serve youth of color and to provide them with workshops, trainings, discussion groups around topics that are relevant to them, using the skills and expertise of our members, our professional members, our graduate student members, et cetera, right? And it is us being present in the community, serving directly youth of color. It is us partnering with a community-based organization so that we can serve that community more directly rather than us just thinking about, okay, here's what youth of color need. It's really us working with a community, taking a listening stance, honoring the voices of those we are trying to serve, and then responding to those voices. So we have assembled a team, and we have partnered up with 3 other divisions within APA. But the team is led by Ida Saluski at DePaul and Angela Ferguson at Howard University, okay? And Ida and Angela are leading a team that consists of representatives from Division 17, which is Counseling Psych, Division 35, Psych of Women, and Division 44, Society for the Psychology of Sexual Orientation and Gender Diversity. And so let me tell you where we're at with that. We have partnered, and let me go to the next slide here, with the Upward Bound Trio program at the University of Illinois, Chicago. That is our community partner. We may have more as we grow. The picture you have in front of you is Dr. Shannon Williams. Shannon is actually a clinical and community psychologist but in her professional role, she's the director of the TRIO program there. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with TRIO programs, TRIO is a federally funded program that's been around since the mid-60s. And it basically targets low-income first-generation students and students with disabilities and helps to facilitate their access to higher education and beyond. And so the Upward Bound program at University of Illinois, Chicago is basically targeting high school students, right, from those backgrounds and helping them get into college. We contacted Shannon and ended up shaping a partnership with her. And Shannon's great. You know, it's wonderful to have a colleague in the community who's also a psychologist. And so Shannon is partnering up with Ida and Angela over here. And we are going to be putting on this Youth of Color Forum. And right now, our hope is we're in the middle of a needs assessment phase when we are actually doing a needs assessment with the youth, with their parents and families, as well as with the staff members in Upward Bound. And our hope then is to figure out, hey, you know, what is it that they need from us and how can we deliver? So some of the preliminary results are really kind of interesting. A lot of the youth are looking to get support around PTSD. Some are, another topic that's really emerging very strongly is around coping with racism and discrimination. Another one is around career development as well. So our hope here is to use the assessment, work with youth leadership there and with parents to figure out what kinds of topics that they need, and then take that and springboard that to action by this committee to identify good speakers who will present and who will come to Chicago and do a presentation, do a training for youth of color, do a training or do a presentation or workshop for their parents, do a training and workshop for the Upward Bound staff. And more important, so it's using our expertise, and here's the most important piece, giving it away, okay? And doing this for free. And so for us, this is really an act of partnership with a community-based organization, but more importantly, it's an act of service, right? And doing right by the privileges we have by our education and sharing that. So we're pretty excited about that. Our hope is to do this as a test case, right? We intentionally chose a community-based partner that has a national profile. So there are Upward Bound programs all across the country, all across the country. And our hope is if we can do this well and do this right, is that Division 45 can take the lead in doing this every single year at convention. So that every year we go to Washington, DC, or San Francisco, or Chicago, or San Diego, that one of the things we do is work with an Upward Bound program there, work with their youth of color, their parents, their moms and dads, their grandparents, their counselors, and say, hey, you know, what do you need and how can we help, right? And so you will notice on this particular slide, Angela Ferguson, who's one of our co-leads, is from Howard University. That was intentional because the next APA convention is going to be where? After Chicago in 2019, the next one is going to be in Washington, DC. So we purposely structured this leadership so that Angela has committed to 2 years of leading this group so that in 2020, she will co-lead a team that will hopefully do the exact same thing with the Upward Bound program at Howard University. So again, you know, what we're doing here is working with a community-based partner, trying to have an impact directly in the community, playing to our strengths, which is our expertise in working with communities of color, families of color, right? And positioning us so that we can have really a meaningful impact. So, you know, the last slide here is just a plug. You know, the Youth of Color Forum will be the day before the Chicago Convention. We've already committed. It will be at the University of Illinois at Chicago. As I said before, this will be about free workshops for students, their families, and their staff. So, you know, as you can see, we're doing a lot of things, but you can see where hopefully I think Division 45 is really trying to think of itself as how do we have an impact directly on people's lives, whether that's, you know, our new colleagues or whether or not it's people outside in the communities that all of us hold dear. So let me stop there. I've been talking a lot. Let me just sort of check in with folks and see, what do you think? How does this sound? Do you have other ideas? Yeah, let me step back. But we have a couple new folks that have joined us. And we have a small enough group so we can just check in, and if you could just introduce yourself as you enter the circle. So Danielle, you want to unmute and just introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Danielle Franks, and I am a fourth-year doctoral student in the Counseling and Psychology program at Louisiana Tech. And I just kind of wanted to jump on and see what Division 45 is kind of up to and how I can kind of get more involved in the division.
Awesome. And hey, congratulations. Fourth year is no small thing. So that must feel really good for you.
Yes, yes. Getting towards the end of everything. So it's exciting.
Good. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us and making the time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Teresa, you want to introduce yourself? I'll give you time to unmute. There you go. Not hearing you. Okay. You might be having some audio problem. Not a problem. So, you know, I didn't want to do all the talking because otherwise then that would just be a lecture and a monologue, right? A good town hall is a back and forth. It's a discussion. And, you know, my hope really today was to give you a peek at some of the things that 45 is striving to do. I would love to hear your reactions to that, as well as what are your own ideas and curiosities about 45. So let me step back here, invite people to the mic, so to speak, and let's see where it goes. So how does this all sound?
Sounds good. I'll go ahead and jump in there. First off, I just really appreciate the conversation and all the aspects and the vision that you are heading, or you're taking Division 45 to. I think it's really great with having a focus on community engagement and more involvement inside of the communities, specifically with the things that you're planning for APA in Chicago at the convention, et cetera. Some things that I'm thinking about, specifically serving in the position as campus representative co-chair, and knowing that we have pockets of students at different institutions who are really working to support the mission and the vision of Division 45 and how we can really make that visible through the work that we're doing. Specifically thinking about here at UND, our chapter of Division 45 is really working to be more intentional with connecting with community organizations and other organizations around campus and the larger Grand Forks community that are really devoted towards addressing issues of racism and various issues that racial and ethnic minorities face. But I think that one challenge that we have in relating the work that we're doing to that of Division 45 is just that representation piece, to where people may see us out there, but I don't know if they necessarily know that we are Division 45, or that we're backed up and we're supported by the division. I mean, we've had ongoing conversations about what we can do to really make the Division of 45 visible through the work that we're doing at our respective institutions. So I'm just thinking about that and thinking about, you know, even with going to convention in Chicago, et cetera, how do we allow the community members and those that we're interacting with to know that we're Division 45, or how can they see that we're Division 45, even if they may have not seen a flyer, or even if they do not directly attend events, etc. So those are just some thoughts and things that I have, and some ways that we really spoke about this is, what are we, like, if we have t-shirts or some things that we can wear to visually show that who we are and the work that we're doing, and who, and division that's backing us up. I think that's one way to just really make that representation a little more visible. Okay.
So Terrell, let me see if I'm hearing you right here, and I'm catching what you need me to hear. So is that more about the branding and the visibility of that, so that people recognize that, oh, this group is with Division 45? Or is it the ability to actually do the work and execute and support for the work? Or it might be both. So
definitely. I think it is a little bit of both. I think that one thing that I'm getting from speaking with campus reps at different institutions is that a lot of the work is being done. So we're definitely still working through with making sure we're building support and we're building these connections with community organizations. However, when those connections are built, I'm not sure if the direct impact or the association as far as with the representation is shown as a movement that's stemming from Division 45.
Okay.
So I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Have you all come up with some thoughts about how we could close that gap? I mean, and again, I don't want to get into problem solving mode here either. In fact, what I'd like to do is just really use the space to identify the questions, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to need more conversation with yourself and Desa and other students in the same space, more in-depth and specific conversations. I don't want to go too far into problem solving mode, but I'm just kind of curious what you've already thought of.
Yeah, I think those are conversations that we're still having just as a committee, as a group in general. As far as with increasing representation, I think that one part is that we have to do a better job of promoting and making sure that we're sending messages out there. And even whenever we are engaging in some of these activities and with the larger community, documenting that, taking pictures, showcasing who we are, and making sure that we spread the word and getting it out there. And then the other part that I mentioned, as far as whenever we do show up in collective groups, having representation through t-shirts or something like that might be a way to really showcase the work that we're engaging in, and showing that it's also a part of Division 45.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, because I've had conversations with our communications team, and they're always saying, like, Alvin, you need a logo. You got to come up with a logo, come up with something. So like the slide you see, this diversity in action thing, is the result of that. But I take your point really well, that there needs to be ways to really signify and identify who we are when we're doing that work, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks, Terrell. Other folks, I mean, what do you think about what we're putting out here? Comments?
I'd like to ask Terrell something, if that's okay. But first, let me just say, even though Alvin and I know a little bit about what you've been doing, just seeing this presentation and all that you've done and coordinating is incredibly exciting. So thank you so much for your leadership and vision in this area. Terrell, I was thinking that it seems to me that what I also heard was that the student reps at some point don't feel like a real part of Division 45. It almost feels separate, like you all do your own thing and it's kind of an affiliate of Division 45. And I'm wondering if there's some more ways that the division could recognize and support, and so that there's more of a shared identity as opposed to identities that there's some commonalities but difference. Does that make sense to you, or am I misrepresenting things?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that's so I think that it's, on one hand, I could say that potentially the larger exec committee or Division 45 as a whole, and then the student organization or specifically the campus representative program are kind of separate entities, but still a part of the larger whole. But I think that it's also more work that can be done on that within the program that we have as campus representatives, and really making sure that we're promoting when, for instance, when events like this are happening. So that way we can also have campus reps attend town halls and speak to specific things that they may be dealing with at their respective institutions. As far as Division 45 supporting the campus representative program, I think that there is support there. I think that it's just some of those smaller things as far as responding when certain events happen, when crises occur and things of that sort, where the support from the large division may not be there, to where all students feel as though their voices are being heard. And I think that again, kind of thinking back to what Alvin's mentioned as far as like not using this as a problem solving session, I think that there's still some more dialogues that we can have with each other just as students to really speak about how we may or may not perceive that support either happening or not happening.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You know, I'm wondering maybe as one step, I'm wondering if there would be a benefit to sitting down with yourself and other campus reps, right? And really begin thinking about how can the division be supportive, right? And how can it also be consistent so that we make that connection a lot more clearer? Because I'm really resonating a lot with what Helen and you are saying. It's like, maybe there seems like there's areas where we could do better.
Yeah, I think that we actually are heading in a great direction. So for instance, I know that you were mentioning inside of your presentation as far as like with increasing the representation and making those changes with the website. And I know that those are some things that have happened. So the Division 45 Campus Representative Program is now recognized on the Division 45 website. And I think that that's great. And we've been speaking with individuals to make sure that their pictures and their names and universities are affiliated, so that way they see that they're appreciated for the work that they're doing. And I think that that's a great first step. Other things that I think that I would appreciate, and I'm sure other campus representatives might appreciate, is if individuals from Division 45 or the exec committee would attend some of our meetings. So for instance, the campus representative program, we host coffee chit chats once a month, and we really use that time to talk about specific issues that students may encounter throughout their graduate studies, but also we talk about different programming and events and initiatives that they're doing with their chapters within the larger community, so their campus community and then the larger cities that they're living in. So I think that just having someone show up and communicate with us would be another way to really kind of make those connections.
Tell you what, I'll take you up on that right now. I'd love to come to a meeting and continue this discussion with a larger group. And if you can contact me offline, I'd be happy to. We'll see if other EC members would like to join us. But I would love to have that dialogue. You know,
sounds great.
Again, just to continue, it's like, okay, what else can we do here? I think one of the things that I think most of the EC will agree on is that the student group is just like going like gangbusters, right? And it's growing in these really, really phenomenal ways, to the point where I'm not sure that we're all fully wrapping our heads around all the things that the student committee, student reps are doing, right? And I think that's great in terms of the initiative that students have been taking, and that's wonderful. But I still think it begs the question, how can we build that connection so that it's clearer? How can we be more of support to student groups in an intentional way? So if it's things like this, and coming to a campus reps meeting and joining you and having that steady ear and making that a regular part of what the EC does, I think we put that on the table and let's see what's possible. I really like that idea. But I'll make a commitment right now to definitely come whenever your time and space allows. So how's that sound? Does that sound like a good?
That sounds great. I really appreciate that. I will reach out and make sure that I send the calendar. If you can just let me know what works with your schedule, I'll make sure that our campus reps are informed.
I would love that. I really, really would love that. Thank you. So Terrell, I know you and I have been, we've been engaging with you, but I want to kind of clear space also and invite other people into the dialogue, or Helen or Teresa, or Danielle. We've talked a lot. What's come up for you?
I think something that I was thinking when you all were talking was having those connections between the student committees and the student groups and the actual EC members will help kind of students understand the transition between becoming a student and an ECP. Because I think for me, being on the end of the student journey, it's kind of like hard for me to fathom what it's going to be like to be an ECP. So having those opportunities to see like, okay, this is what life looks like, and this is how I am involved as an ECP instead of a student in Division 45. I think anytime that there are opportunities for students to do that would be really good.
To kind of see that transition,
Yeah.
that looks like with ECPs then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a place that we're not as intentional at, right? Mm-hmm. And part of, and you know, I think Desa and Barbara will talk about this more. One of the things we intentionally did was we made this a next gen task force. Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just a graduate student task force. This wasn't just an ECP task force, right? We wanted it to cover both, because whatever it is that we designed really had to look at how that's a continuum and how people will developmentally grow and shift into each of those. So by necessity, that required us as a division to really think about, all right, how do we create support systems? How does our structure, governance, how do things on a website need to shift so that it honors that that's a continuum, as opposed to like two discrete communities, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so we can't treat them as discrete communities. We need to treat them as on a developmental continuum. Mm-hmm. So, you know, so it was very intentional. On that committee, we had relatively new graduate students, more senior ones like Desa, people who were like probably pushing into mid-career, like Barbara, who is, you know, just right about on the tenure spot, as well as James, who is kind of new as a tenure track faculty member. So, you know, there was a lot of intentionality about that should be really honored as a continuum of development. But I'm kind of curious to hear more, Danielle, about what you're thinking about. Like, what might that look like? I mean, just from your experience or your thinking. And if you don't have an answer, that's okay. And you can just tell me to go away. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was just intrigued by your ideas.
No, I mean, I definitely appreciate that, your intentionality in making that continuum of, okay, let's involve younger or more, you know, junior graduate students, more senior graduate students, because it kind of helps shape the way that they see themselves in this field. So I really do appreciate that. How to improve and kind of build upon that, I'm not really sure. But I think that the groundwork that you guys are doing is really great. I really appreciate that.
You know, it's interesting. My daughter, both my daughters, I have little kids, one's 7, one's 10, and they have this thing in their school that I've always been very fascinated by, and I've always kind of wondered how we could sort of take that and replicate that in a group like 45. And they have this notion of families, which I think is really beautiful. And so every kid is assigned to a family. Mm-hmm. From the moment you enter at kindergarten, So, and that family it's in kindergarten. You have a family member who's in kinder, a family member who's in first, a family member who's in second, all the way to a family member who's in eighth. And you stay in your family, and there's programming done around this notion of family. So the families do projects together, they create things together, they have activities together, you know, but one of the things that has always drawn me to that, and it kind of speaks to your point, Danielle, is, you know, it'd be kind of cool if we created families within a group like 45, right? And you know, you're still in the same family, and there's a connection there across the developmental span. And you know, if we were to do mentoring around families, or programming around families, or discussion groups around families and stuff, but really finding a way, since, you know, since so many of us come from cultures that really honor families and the collective, right? And thinking about how to connect people in that way. So like my daughter, who's now in 5th grade, she's been in her family since kinder. And so she's grown up with her family just like we do with our families. And anyway, so your comments just kind of really kind of sparked something that's been in the back of my head.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. I think that anytime that students can receive mentorship, especially mentorship out of the program that they're in, is really helpful, because it helps them see kind of what the field looks like as a whole, rather than kind of the silo that is their program. So I think any opportunity that students have to do that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool. Like if you had a family, you know, as, you know, a 1st or 2nd year, and then there's a 4th year family, and then there's a family member who's early in their career, somebody, a family in their mid-career.
Right.
An elder, right? And that's your family.
Yeah.
So anyway, part of the dreaming piece. Anything else? Helen, Teresa, I know, I trust both of you were trying to give space to Danielle and Terrell, but I wanted to be respectful of you too, and see comments or questions, or, and Terrell and Danielle, if you have others too, just hop on in.
Alvin, you're absolutely correct. Really wanting to give space for other folks to comment. I'm just trying to take it all in. And I know that you and I are in communication, and you've been updating me on these really wonderful things that are going on. So wanting to give other people opportunities to engage in the dialogue as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So you know, the other piece that I wanted to share with folks too is that, you know, apart from these broad initiatives, you know, there are a number of other range of issues that we are wrestling with within the division. And I wanted to kind of briefly touch on that. Terrell, you kind of mentioned particularly around the incidents, when incidents happen, right? You know, how do we respond to that? That has been a big topic of concern within the executive committee. And we'll probably be coming out with something more publicly for the rest of the division. But one of the challenges that we are faced with is a couple things. Probably the biggest challenge that we're faced with, sadly, is that there's just so much going on. The level of violence, the level of attacks that are going on in this country as well as around the world is just really unprecedented, right? It's a daily onslaught on our spirits. And so one of the questions has been, so like, how do we respond to that given the volume and frequency of that? That's a challenge. Part of the challenge is about the volume. I think it's also fair to say that part of the challenge is the capacity of an organization such as ours, which is largely, well, not largely, entirely, excuse me, voluntary, right? when everybody in the leadership has full-time jobs and full-time families? And how do we respond to that given the volume? The other challenge for us is how do we respond also in a timely way, right? Now, within minutes, people are tweeting, people are posting, videos pop out left and right. And the challenge is, how do you keep up with the pace of that? And do we have the bandwidth to be able to respond in as timely a fashion as we would like? So that's another question. And then the fourth challenge that we are wrestling with is that we are a division of APA. And so there's a bureaucratic challenge for us. What that really specifically refers to is that anytime we as a division respond or make a statement formally about any incident, that has to be vetted by APA. And that has to be vetted by their legal counsel to see and demonstrate that it is consistent with the larger association stance. If we were to sign a petition, for instance, and I were to say Division 45, that needs to be vetted. We have even developed a template about responding so that we could do this a little bit quicker, but that also needs to be vetted. So, these are significant challenges, but we are really aware that the division can and should take a stance on these things. I don't think there's an easy answer right now for how to do that, given some of the limitations that I shared with you all, but I know that there's a genuine and honest, and quite honestly, appropriate expectation of the division to do this and to take a stance. But how to navigate it is a little bit challenging right now. So we have developed a media response protocol. We've talked about it in the EC. We are working to revise it right now. We'd like to share it with the larger membership, and we'll probably, I'll probably be posting that on the listserv to get people's input on that, but also to share with them, quite honestly, and in good faith, some of the limitations we're faced here. So there's a lot of pieces in there that's really sort of tricky for us, but it is something that we're wrestling with. But Terrell, I mentioned that specifically because you had kind of brushed up against it, and I just wanted to honor that you had mentioned that. So I'm curious how that kind of resonates with you one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you sharing that as well and making mention of it. I completely understand the bureaucratic aspect, and then just the responding to the timeliness and the frequency of which events are occurring. I definitely do hear that and completely understand it.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons I'd like to send that out to the larger community is, again, to tap into the collective wisdom, see what people think, right? And so for instance, one of the ideas that came in from the EC is like, well, if we can't do official statements as quickly as we would like, what if we could encourage our membership, for instance, to do letter campaigns or email campaigns, right? And direct them to an organization or to a government official, right? And develop templates that, hey, this isn't Division 45 per se, but as a division member, we would encourage you to take this template, borrow it, and send it to your congresswoman, or, send it to the head of this corporation or something like that, right? And so maybe part of this is really using the organization as a way to empower individuals and to facilitate their voice. So, I honestly, I hadn't thought about it in that way, right? And so my hope in being as transparent about some of the challenges we're at here is that maybe collectively we can figure a way, all right, what can we do given the limitations we have, right? And rather than just kind of walk away from it and say, we can't do anything. I don't believe that. I feel like we can at least do good due diligence and wrestle with these. So with that, we will continue to do that. Anything else? Because I'm noticing we're at time. I want to be respectful at your time, but Terrell, Danielle, anything else you want to put out there? I am in no rush right now. My partner is kind enough to pick up my girls, so I don't have to rush to get them. So if you've got any of the other comments or questions, I'd love to sit with you.
I guess just one last question that I have that I'm thinking about. How can we as students, specifically me sharing the message back to individuals inside of the Campus Representative Program, how can we really support your mission and your vision and really spreading the word about this diversity and action preparing for convention?
I would say that even like, I'm going to send out these slides to the entire listserv. I will send out a link to this this whole town hall. So feel free to send that to people individually so that they can look at it at their own leisure. I'd also say that, there's a lot of different places for involvement and opportunity in these initiatives. So for instance, for Next Generation Task Force, one of the things that Desa and Barbara are going to do is do a needs assessment, right? For graduate students and early career folks. Help us get that word out. Fill it out yourself. Let us hear what you're doing. Come to the next town hall. The next one is on community engagement with Chris and Rebecca. The one after that is with Desa and Barbara. And then the one after that is going to be with our youth of color folks, So just show up there. Let us hear their voices. Let's have the dialogue that you and I are having, right? So that's another place, is just to be present, right? Because that fuels us. And then I think if people feel comfortable taking it to the next step, maybe raising your hand and say, I want to do more than just be present. Can we join a committee? Can we help you put on Youth of Color Forum, And if you don't know where to start about who to contact, you can always contact me. And then I can certainly direct that. That kind of thing, invite myself or, create space to come to your campus reps or to even just have a chat with your colleagues. I've had a number of those chats, both virtual as well as in person with different constituent groups. So I'd say there's different ways of different degrees of engagement there, but it really starts out with just reaching out and communicating to us, and then let's see where it goes from there. Does that make sense?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So be sure, I'm going to look for an email from you to figure out the whole campus reps thing. We'll figure out a time for me to come. I would love if you'd like me to invite other members of the EC to come and join us. That would be very cool. But it'd be nice to just, break bread and, just talk. Yeah. Danielle, how about you? Anything last comments or questions for me or reactions?
Nothing really specifically pops into my head, but I just really appreciate you creating this forum. I think that it's a really good idea to get people involved and creating connections. So thanks for getting us involved, I guess.
Thank you. And likewise, I would never have met you. And, I saw Terrell's name kind of pass by in email once, but, it's nice to have just, an hour of time to just connect. And
yeah,
this can be the seed of other connections down the road. So thank you. Thank you for being present and just engaging with us tonight. So tell you what, folks, it's a little bit after 5. Why don't we call it a night? I will, as I said, send out a message with both these slides as well as the recording, a link to the recording. Please feel free to distribute this. If, Danielle, Terrell, particularly, if other stuff sort of pop up in your head that like, oh, I should have talk this, or an idea pops up in your head, or if you want to continue more dialogue, you know, call me, write me, you know, email me. It's aalvarez@sfsu. And I'm pretty easy to access. Okay?
Sounds great. Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good night. And again, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
You too.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye, on.